Hey everyone, welcome back to Life Turns. If you're new here, thank you for joining this beautiful family where we share stories that touch the heart and open the soul. Today's story is something that still makes my chest tighten every time I think about it. It's about betrayal, pride, and the moment I learned that blood doesn't always mean love. So sit back, relax, and let me tell you how my sister's wedding turned my entire world upside down. It was supposed to be the happiest day for our family. My sister, Lila, was getting married to a man named Eric, a charming, successful guy who seemed like the perfect match. Everyone adored him, and honestly, I was happy for her. But deep down, I knew something was off. Not with her wedding, with how my parents treated the two of us. You see, ever since we were kids, Lila was the golden one. The perfect daughter who could do no wrong. And me? I was just the other one. The quiet shadow standing behind her spotlight. Still, I told myself to push those feelings aside. This was her big day, not about me. I smiled through every photo, fixed her veil, calmed her nerves, and made sure everything went perfectly. When she walked down the aisle, she looked like a dream, and I felt proud. My little sister was getting married. But I didn't know that just a few hours later, that same pride would turn into heartbreak. The ceremony ended beautifully, and the reception started. Music, laughter, dancing, everything was glowing. Guests were giving toasts, my father was beaming, and my mother was crying happy tears. I sat quietly at the family table, just soaking it all in. Then came the moment for my parents to give their speech. Everyone went silent as my dad took the mic. He cleared his throat, looked around the hall, and said something I'll never forget. "We're so proud of Lila," he said. "She's always been the light of our family. The daughter any parent would be lucky to have." Honestly, he chuckled, sometimes we wish she was our only child. Laughter filled the hall. But not from me. My chest froze. My mom laughed too, nodding along, and added, "Oh, you know he's joking, but yes, Lila has always been special. She made us proud in ways words can't describe." The guests laughed again, but all I heard was a ringing in my ears. I tried to smile, but my lips trembled. I felt invisible. Humiliated. Like every insecurity I'd buried my whole life had just been confirmed, publicly, in front of hundreds of people. My hands started shaking under the table. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I excused myself quietly and went to the restroom, locking myself in a stall. I could still hear the laughter echoing in my head. "We wish she was our only child." The sentence burned like fire. I leaned against the wall, trying not to cry, but tears kept coming. I thought, why am I never enough for them? I worked hard, helped them, stayed respectful, but somehow, I was always second best. After a few minutes, I wiped my face, fixed my makeup, and told myself to be strong. I wasn't going to ruin my sister's wedding by making a scene. When I stepped back out, I ran into Eric, the groom. He saw my red eyes and asked softly, "Hey, are you okay?" I tried to lie and said, "Yeah, just allergies." But he wasn't buying it. He smiled gently and said, "You don't have to pretend. I heard what your dad said." My heart sank. I didn't know what to say. I just looked down, embarrassed. But then Eric did something unexpected. He said, "You know, from what I've seen, you're the real backbone of this family. You kept everything together today, honestly, you're the boss here." He laughed lightly. "So if anyone asks, I'll tell them my wife's sister is the real boss of this wedding." That made me smile, for the first time that day. His words felt like a warm hand on a cold heart. For a moment, I didn't feel so small. I thanked him, and he just said, "Don't thank me. You deserve to be seen." After that, I went back out. My parents didn't even notice I'd been gone. They were too busy dancing and taking pictures. I sat at the corner table, just observing. Everyone looked so happy, and I kept wondering if I was wrong to feel hurt. Maybe it was just a joke. But then I remembered all the little moments from the past, how my achievements were barely noticed, how every conversation somehow ended with them praising Lila, how I learned to clap for her even when no one clapped for me. When it was time for the bouquet toss, Lila called me out. "Come on, sis, you have to join," she said, laughing. I shook my head, saying I wasn't in the mood, but she insisted. "Don't be shy." The crowd cheered, and reluctantly, I joined the group of single girls waiting for her throw. The bouquet flew, and landed right in my hands. Everyone screamed and clapped. Lila ran over, hugged me tight, and whispered, "See? You're next." Her words were sweet, but I could still feel my parents' eyes on me, cold and distant. My dad even joked, "Well, I hope she finds someone as patient as Eric, because she'll need it." More laughter. I forced a smile again, but inside, I was breaking all over. Later that night, as things started to wind down, I stepped outside to breathe. The air was cool, and the stars were out. Eric came out again, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one. "You held it together better than anyone tonight," he said softly. I laughed bitterly and said, "You don't know half of it." He smiled and said, "Maybe not. But I can tell strength when I see it." That moment changed something in me. For the first time, I realized I didn't need my parents' approval to feel worthy. I didn't need anyone's validation to know my value. The groom, a man who'd just joined our family, saw something in me that my own parents never had. That night, under the stars, I promised myself that I'd stop chasing love where it was never offered. As the lights dimmed and guests started leaving, my parents came over and hugged Lila tightly, showering her with love and blessings. Then my mom turned to me and said, "Thanks for helping out today. You did well." It was the closest thing to affection I'd ever gotten from her. But it was too late. The words didn't fill me anymore. They just echoed in the empty space my heart had built for them. That night, when I got home, I took off my shoes, sat on the edge of my bed, and cried until I couldn't anymore. I thought about my life, my worth, and the truth, that sometimes, family can break you more deeply than anyone else ever could. The next morning, the house was silent, but my mind was anything but. I kept replaying the night over and over, every laugh, every word, every look my parents gave me. "We wish she was our only child." I whispered those words to myself like they were a curse. I couldn't believe my parents could say something so cruel, especially on such a special day. I wanted to hate them, but deep down, a small part of me still hoped there was some misunderstanding. Maybe they didn't mean it the way it sounded. Maybe I was just too sensitive. But no matter how hard I tried to twist it, the pain didn't lessen. It was like that sentence had carved a permanent scar in my chest. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window, staring at nothing. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from Lila. "Hey sis, thank you for everything yesterday. I couldn't have done it without you. You're the best." Her message was so warm that I couldn't even stay mad at her. She had no idea what had happened. She didn't hear what our parents said. And I wasn't going to ruin her newlywed happiness by telling her. I just replied, "You looked beautiful. I'm happy for you." And I meant it. Because no matter how much pain I felt, I never wanted to put that pain on her. A few days later, my parents invited me over for dinner. I didn't want to go, but my conscience wouldn't let me refuse. When I arrived, they were cheerful as if nothing had happened. My mom was cooking, my dad watching TV, and both acted like the wedding speech never existed. During dinner, I tried to stay quiet, but my mom noticed my distant tone. "You've been quiet lately," she said. "Everything okay?" I hesitated, then said softly, "Yeah. Just tired." She smiled faintly. "You work too much. You should learn from your sister, she knows how to enjoy life." That sentence stung again. Always comparing. Always reminding me who their favorite was. Finally, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I put down my fork and said, "Mom, Dad. I wanted to ask something. They looked at me, confused. I took a deep breath and said, at the wedding, you said you wished Lila was your only child. Was that supposed to be a joke? The silence that followed was heavier than I expected. My dad looked uncomfortable, my mom sighed. Oh honey, she said dismissively, you know your father. He jokes too much. My dad chuckled weakly. Yeah, it was just for fun. Don't take it so seriously. But the thing is, I saw their eyes when they said it. It wasn't a joke. It was a truth they'd wrapped in laughter. I forced a smile, but I felt tears forming. Okay, I said quietly, if that's what you say. My mom looked at me and rolled her eyes. You're too emotional, just like always. Don't ruin family moments with your overthinking. I nodded silently, realizing that there was no space in this family for my feelings. I was there to help, to fix, to support, but never to be loved equally. That night, when I returned home, I sat on my bed again and thought about Eric, my sister's husband. The way he'd looked at me with kindness, the way he'd said, you're the boss. It wasn't flirtation, it was respect. And I realized that respect was something I'd been craving my whole life. I didn't need grand love or applause. I just needed to be seen. To be valued for who I was, not for how well I could please others. That thought stayed with me for days. Months passed. Layla and Eric moved to another city, and we didn't talk as often, but whenever she called, she sounded happy. My parents, on the other hand, grew distant. They called Layla often, bragged about her new house, her new life, but rarely checked on me. I tried not to let it get to me. Instead, I started focusing on myself. I threw myself into work, joined a writing class, started saving for my own apartment. For once, I was doing something just for me. One afternoon, I got a call from Eric. He said, hey, I know this is random, but I wanted to thank you again for everything you did at the wedding. Lila and I were talking about how much you helped that day. His kindness felt genuine. I laughed and said, don't mention it, that's what sisters are for. But he replied, no, that's what strong people do. You handled everything with grace. You've got a quiet strength that people underestimate. That line hit deep. Because that was me, the quiet one, the invisible one, the underestimated one. Yet somehow, he'd seen it. That night, I thought about my life again. Every time my parents had ignored my achievements, every time they made me feel small, maybe that was never about me. Maybe it was about them. Their expectations, their narrow view of what pride should look like. Maybe I wasn't broken, maybe they were just blind. That realization gave me peace I hadn't felt in years. I finally began to see myself the way others did, capable, kind, resilient. Then came Lila's birthday. My parents were hosting a small party, and of course, they wanted me to help organize it. I agreed, but this time, I didn't go out of my way to please anyone. I arrived on time, did what was asked, and didn't bend backward trying to earn smiles. When I walked in, I noticed Eric talking to my dad. He waved at me with a grin. Hey, boss. There you are. Everyone looked confused, and my dad laughed, boss? What's that about? Eric smiled and said, oh, that's what I call her. She practically ran our whole wedding day. Learn to listen to her, things go smoother that way. Everyone chuckled, but for the first time, the laughter didn't sting. It felt warm. For once, I wasn't the punchline, I was part of the joy. My dad looked at me differently, almost surprised. Maybe he realized, even if just for a second, how much I'd done for everyone. My mom just smiled awkwardly, not knowing what to say. And for the first time, I didn't crave her words. I didn't need them anymore. After the party, Eric came over and said, I hope you didn't mind me calling you boss again. I laughed. No, I liked it. He smiled. Good. Because you should own it. You've got this leadership energy, you just don't realize it yet. That night, I went home feeling lighter. It was as if my heart had learned something new, that being loved isn't about being chosen by others, it's about choosing yourself first. Weeks later, my parents called to say Lila and Eric were expecting a baby. Everyone was thrilled, and I was genuinely happy for them. But for the first time, I didn't feel left out. I felt grounded. I'd stopped competing for their love. I had built a small, quiet world for myself, filled with peace, independence, and a few good friends who truly cared. And that, I realized, was enough. But deep inside, I knew I'd never forget that wedding night. Not because it broke me, but because it woke me up. It showed me that sometimes, the harshest words are the ones that set you free. Months rolled by, and life started to settle into a quiet rhythm. I had learned to find comfort in my own company. My mornings began with coffee and silence instead of noise and expectation. For the first time in years, I wasn't chasing approval, not from my parents, not from anyone. But even as peace filled most of my days, there were still moments when that sentence haunted me, "We wish your sister was our only child." It would echo in my mind like an old wound that hadn't fully healed. I'd tell myself it didn't matter anymore, but some nights, it still did. Because no matter how strong you become, pain has a way of reminding you where you came from. One evening, as I sat reading, my phone buzzed again. It was Lila. Her voice was shaky, nervous. "Hey, can I talk to you?" she asked. I could tell something was wrong. "Of course," I said. "What happened?" There was silence for a few seconds before she whispered, "It's about Mom and Dad." My heart sank instantly. She explained that she had overheard them talking about me. They were saying how I'd changed, how I thought too highly of myself lately, and that maybe it's good she stays busy so she doesn't burden us. Layla said she couldn't stay silent anymore. "It's not right how they talk about you," she said. "You've done nothing but love them." I stayed quiet, letting her words sink in. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry this time. I'd already shed too many tears over them. "Thanks for telling me," I said softly. "But honestly, it doesn't surprise me anymore." Layla sighed. "I don't get them," she said. "You've always been there for us. They don't see it." That call lasted over an hour, and for the first time, Lila and I spoke openly, not as sisters competing for love, but as two women trying to understand our parents. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Maybe the bond I'd always wanted with my family wasn't with my parents, maybe it was with her. A few weeks later, Lila invited me to visit her. I hesitated at first, but when I saw her, I realized how much I missed her. She was glowing with pregnancy, her belly small but visible, her smile wide. Eric greeted me with that same warmth, saying, "Boss. Welcome home." I laughed, hugging them both. They'd made a beautiful little home, cozy, full of love. And for the first time, I felt what real family could be. It wasn't about blood. It was about how people made you feel. I spent the weekend helping them decorate the baby's room, laughing more than I had in months. One night, as we sat on the couch, Lila looked at me and said, "I want my child to have an aunt who teaches them strength, and that's you." Those words hit harder than she probably realized. I smiled, my heart full. "I'll be the best aunt ever," I said. And I meant it. Because that baby would grow up knowing love, not comparison. They'd never feel invisible the way I did. Then came the day I had been silently dreading. My parents came to visit Lila and Eric, too. I didn't know they'd be there. When I walked into the house and saw them sitting on the couch, my breath caught. My mother looked surprised, my father looked awkward. "Oh, you're here," my mom said flatly. "Yes," I replied calmly. Layla invited me. The room felt thick with unspoken tension. Eric, sensing the discomfort, smiled and tried to lighten the mood. "The whole family together, this is nice." But I could feel my mother's disapproval. She didn't like sharing the spotlight. Dinner was quiet. Lila tried to keep the conversation going, but it felt forced. At one point, my dad asked about my job, and when I told him about a promotion I'd recently gotten, he just nodded and said, "Good, at least you're keeping yourself busy." No congratulations, no pride. Just another indifferent remark. But this time, I didn't shrink. I smiled and said, "Yes, I am. It's nice achieving something on my own." My mother glanced at me sharply, probably hearing the edge in my voice. But I didn't back down. I wasn't that quiet, obedient daughter anymore. After dinner, as everyone relaxed in the living room, I felt something stirring inside me, that ache that had been waiting too long for closure. I stood up and said softly, "Can we talk?" Everyone looked at me, surprised. My voice was calm, but my hands were trembling. "I've been carrying something since the wedding," I continued. "And I can't keep it in anymore." My mother sighed, already annoyed. "Oh, not this again," she began, but I interrupted her, something I'd never dared to do before. "No. Please. Let me finish." The room fell silent. "At Lila's wedding," I said, "you said you wished she was your only child. You laughed. Everyone laughed. But that wasn't funny to me. It broke something in me. For years, I've tried to earn your love, to be enough, but no matter what I did, it was never enough. And that night, you confirmed it." My father's face tightened. My mother looked away. "I'm not saying this to blame you," I added. "I'm saying it because I need to let it go. I love you both, but I can't keep carrying the weight of trying to be seen." No one spoke for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, Eric said quietly, "She's right." My dad looked up, startled. Eric continued, "You might not realize it, but those words hurt her deeply. I saw it that day. You have two incredible daughters, and you should be proud of both." The room went still. My mom's eyes softened for just a second, the first flicker of emotion I'd seen in her for years. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she finally said. "Sometimes parents joke too much." I nodded slowly. "I know," I said. "But jokes can wound, especially when they come from the people we love most." That night changed everything. It wasn't a grand reconciliation, there were no tears, no hugs, no perfect ending. But something shifted. My parents didn't apologize outright, but their tone softened afterward. They started calling more often, checking in. Small steps, but enough. And for me, that was closure. Not the fantasy version, just quiet acceptance that I'd said my truth and freed myself from their shadow. A few months later, Lila gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. When I held him for the first time, his tiny hand wrapped around my finger, I felt something new, not pain, not loss, but purpose. I whispered, "You're going to grow up loved for exactly who you are." And in that moment, I realized, maybe life had given me pain so I could break the cycle for someone else. Years from now, when that little boy asks me about my family, I'll tell him the truth, that love isn't about who shines the brightest, it's about who stands with you in the dark. I'll tell him that sometimes, the people who hurt you the most also teach you the most. And I'll tell him that no matter what, you must always be your own biggest believer. Because the world can take everything from you, except your worth. And that's how, at my sister's wedding, when my parents said they wished she was their only child, I learned the hardest, most beautiful truth of all. Sometimes rejection isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of your freedom.